Well, just 3 days before the NFL draft kicks off in Kansas City, Missouri, the New York Jets and the Green Bay Packers get on the horn and they finalize the trade. Four-time MVP quarterback Aaron Rodgers is now a New York Jet. Obviously, Twitter has gone rampant. I think a lot of Jets fans are sad to see a lot of those draft picks go, but I also think a lot of Jets fans are happy that we'll finally get competent quarterback play and what could be a deep playoff run. What's up, everybody? Welcome to a special emergency breaking news podcast, JetNation Live. We are your hosts, Dylan Terman and Glenn Naughton. As I just said at the top, Aaron Rodgers is now officially a New York Jet. The trade compensation is quite hefty. It does include 6 total picks being exchanged. The New York Jets send the 13th overall pick, their first round pick, their second round pick, 42nd, and their 6th round pick, 207, and a conditional second round pick that becomes a first if Rodgers plays 65% of the snaps in 2023. And they receive the Packers first round pick, number 15 overall, a 5th round pick, number 170 overall, and obviously quarterback Aaron Rodgers. Glenn, we talked a little bit in the pre-show about our feelings. I'll let you get them off your chest here. How are we feeling about this trade overall, and should we be excited at the end with all these picks that have been exchanged?
Well, I mean, you gotta tip your cap to the Packers. They held the line. They knew what they wanted. They didn't want to give up any protection to the Jets, which they ended up not giving any protection to the Jets. They wanted a first rounder next year, which as long as Aaron Rodgers has a pulse, they get a first rounder next year. They wanted obviously to unload that, albatross of a contract, which the Jets took on. Nobody else was willing to take that on. The Jets took it. That was very kind of them. And they got rid of a player they didn't want. So, I mean, the Packers win. Got rid of a guy they didn't want, unloaded $100 million in salary they didn't want. They got the first rounder they demanded, and they gave up no protection, which is what they wanted. The Jets wanted protection, didn't get it, didn't want to give up the one, gave up the one. So the Pack, I mean, we can say, oh, but look at look at Aaron Rodgers' history. And yeah, I get that. I get that he's a productive player. But just from a trade standpoint, like what each team wanted out of this, the Packers gave up nothing that they didn't want to give up. So you tip your cap to them. The Jets kind of, I think the draft's getting close. They clearly panicked a little bit and just said, give them what they want. Forget about keeping next year's one. I mean, you can call it conditional, but it's basically Aaron Rodgers has a pulse and they get that one. He's played at least 16. He started at least 16 games. I believe it's 15 out of the last 17 years. And you're 65%. I mean, I said earlier, they may as well just be, the condition may as well be based on him putting his shoes on the right feet. Like it's going to happen. The Packers got the first rounder they wanted. And the Jets get 1, possibly 2 years of Aaron Rodgers under center. I'm racking my brain. I'm trying to think. I can't remember. I've been a fan for 35 or so years. I can't remember another team giving up a 1 and a 2 for a 1 or 2 year rental. But the Jets often do things that most teams wouldn't do.
Yeah, I think the closest even parameters of a trade, and they're not even that close in general, are the Goff and Stafford trade from LA and Detroit. And that was just a weird trade in general because ones were sent back for the price of, Jared Goff. So it is very unprecedented to see this amount of, assets going for a 39-year-old quarterback who will turn 40 in December. We had a question here from Nico in the chat. Do you think it's a steal or not for the Packers? I don't necessarily think it's a steal. I think that if you want to put a percentage on the trade, it's probably 60-40 Packers, just because we're getting the best player, in franchise history in Aaron Rodgers. Whether, he plays 15 games, 17 games, 11 games, those 11 games are probably going to be the best 11 games of any Jets fan's life that's been a fan for 25 or less years. So from that perspective, I guess it's not that bad of a steal. But when I looked at the trade and all the details that came involved, I didn't like the pick swap. We talked about it offline. I didn't like the pick swap at all. We're now between the Patriots, but on the wrong side of the Patriots. I don't expect the Packers to take a player we're targeting. I think it's either going to be Dalton Kincaid or Jackson Smith-Njigba, which I think Jets fans have, locked in on being their guy if it is a wide receiver. But I feel like that was a smokescreen that the Jets were always going to be in on tackle. So they take a pass catcher at 13. Now the Patriots have a lot of similar needs as the Jets, specifically offensive tackle. The Patriots could now snipe the Jets for whichever offensive tackle they want. I think recent mock drafts had them taking Paris Johnson or Broderick Jones after the Jets even take a tackle. So it's going to be really interesting to see which tackles are on the board for the Jets when that comes to the pick, if that is the position they want to go. And then my other thing about the trade, and this wasn't necessarily it having to do with Rodgers and the actual trade, but him wearing number 8, that speaks a lot to me about his understanding of the Jets history, what Joe Namath has meant to the franchise of the Jets, to out of respect. Those were the words used on NFL Live today, was out of respect for Joe Namath, he's not going to wear 12. And I get it, to some people that's like stupid and it means nothing, but I think when you put it all into perspective, a guy that's never even taken a snap for this team cares enough to let 12 hang in the rafters. And I'm not saying that this means it's a 2-year guarantee, but if he really didn't give a shit about the legacy of the Jets or Joe Namath or anything like that, and was like, it's 1 year anyway, I'm going to retire in 2023, I'm just going to wear my number 12, say F it, and who cares? Because he wouldn't care about the Jets. So I think there's a little bit of I care about the Jets still baked into that. I do have a little bit of a problem with the conditional pick, just the parameters of it. 65% snaps, like you said, you put the right shoes on your feet, and you got 65% snaps out of Aaron Rodgers. So that kind of didn't sit well with me. I thought it'd be tougher for that to become a first-round pick, like the Jets make a win in the playoffs, or host a divisional game or something of that nature. So I felt like the conditional side of it was a little weak, but at the end of the day, man, I don't know. Aaron Rodgers, I'm only 28. I understand you said you've been a fan for 35 years, so that pre-exists my whole entire life. So I understand your frustration and you're wanting the picks as well as the player, because what we got for Favre, or what we gave up for Favre, does not match what we gave up for Rodgers. But from my perspective, I'm just like, I don't know. Aaron Rodgers is the top 6 quarterback in the NFL when healthy. So we're looking at a deep playoff run, in my opinion. So I'm excited, although I do have reservations about everything involved with the trade, obviously.
Yeah, I said from the beginning that I would have no problem giving up a 1 if it was based on a Super Bowl appearance.
Right.
But it's based on nothing. You just get a 1. I mean, like I
Yep.
said, they bake in a condition to make it sound like they didn't completely cave, but they did. Like the Packers said what they wanted, and the Jets gave it to them. But
Yep.
to save face a little bit, they say, well, rather than us give you the guaranteed 1, let's tie in a silly little condition that he's met 15 of the last 17 years and will, in all likelihood, meet again. And like I said, even if he doesn't, even if it's 2 2s for a year or 2 of play, that's still too high for me. Like, I mean, people are so happy about having like an awesome, a guy who's going to put up insane fantasy football numbers. He's going to throw a ton of touchdowns. So it's like, I don't care about, history or precedent or what it would normally cost to acquire a player of that caliber. Because it's, I often say this when people lose their minds and they want to give up more than you should have to give up. I often compare it to the old Eddie Murphy used to have a bit about, well, I can't really say because it's a family show, but if you've ever seen the bit about the Ritz crackers, and if you haven't, if somebody locked you up and you've been starving and you haven't had a Ritz cracker or you haven't had food in a while, and someone gives you a Ritz cracker, you're going to lose your mind and you're not even going to believe that it's just a regular Ritz cracker. There was something else tied into it, but that's the adult part of it. So, I mean, that's what it is. Like, the Jets are so desperate. The Jets are so desperate for, well, he's not, but if it had been a Ritz cracker, it would have gotten, a similar response, because fans just, they want competence so bad that they're willing to give up, more than it should cost. Like I said, Favre was a conditional 4th. Favre, this contract is worse. The fact that he might retire is worse. The fact he's coming off of a worse year than Favre was coming off of. So, like, in every single respect, on the side-by-side comparison, the Jets are getting the worst of it in every way. And for Favre, it was a conditional 4th, and now Over the Cap did their calculation, and they what the Jets gave up in this deal was equivalent to the 7th overall pick. So the last time they made this deal, it was for a 4th rounder. This year, it's for pick 7 overall, and from a points perspective. So, I mean, listen, I know people want to feel good about it, so they'll say, I don't care, and it's great, and da-da-da. They got fleeced. If you win a ring, it makes it a lot easier. But at the end of the day, you did the Packers a huge fan. There's a reason why there wasn't a ton of bidding. Other teams didn't want this contract. And here's the thing, like anyone who says, oh, well, we got Aaron Rodgers, how can you not be happy? You're being so negative. These are two different topics, really. Like, yeah, I wanted Aaron Rodgers. I also wanted him at market price. You know what I mean? Like, if there's a car that I like and I show up to the lot and the guy says it's 30 grand, how big of an idiot if I say, you know what, I like it so much, I'm going to give you 150. No, like get the thing you want for the price that it costs and then be happy about it. But what they did here was go in and grossly overpay. And again, I know fans don't like the negative and they want everything to be, the positive spin. And but what if this and what if he plays maybe he plays 3 years, but he said 3 weeks ago he was 90% retired. I don't know how you go from 90% retired to playing 3 more seasons into your 40s. Like not a lot of quarterbacks play well into their 40s. So I think they overpaid. No, if they win the Super Bowl, I won't give a damn. But it's, it still doesn't change the overpay. Like, performance and compensation are two different conversations. And based on the history of, what you see given up for guys, they overpaid. So the Packers played it well. The Jets didn't. Now they got their guy, and now the pressure's on them to win. And I want to actually segue that, Dylan, if you don't mind, unless you have more on Aaron Rodgers. Segue that. I was thinking, just yesterday about, the way we've been talking about the way the Jets are going to approach this draft. And I keep saying they're not taking a QB because they've got to have an every down guy. Now, depending on how they feel about Mekhi Becton, even if they believe that like he's lost all the weight and all of his medicals are coming back good, and the doctors tell him they think there's a strong chance he won't have any lingering issues, drafting a tackle could land them with having 3 tackles. I know you could obviously play the best 2, but let's say the rookie, let's say Becton and Dwayne Brown are both healthy and they're both playing really well. That 15th overall pick is on the bench now. Like your first round pick isn't contributing. Or let's say the kid plays well. You're going to bench Dwayne Brown. Are you going to be a team with a 1 to possibly 2 year window benching an $11 million asset? Like I'm not saying they won't go tackle, but I'm looking at this and thinking you've just given up picks. You've only got 5 left now, and you're going to use one of them on a guy who's not going to play with a 2 year window. Like, so 4 players and 2 of them are day. How many of them are day 3 picks? Like, I don't know. I mean, they got. I've said all along. I think they're going to work hard to trade down. But as we say, it takes 2 to tango. So maybe they trade down, maybe they don't. But as it stands, like, what do you do now? You've got 5 picks, and if you take a tackle with that first one, that's a guy who may not play, and now you've got 4 picks in a year where you've gone all in.
Yeah, I actually wrote about this basically verbatim how you put it in my scouting report for JetNation.com about Broderick Jones. I said, at worst, you're probably getting a player who's going to be a top half of the league swing tackle behind Dwayne Brown and Mekhi Becton. That's obviously assuming the health of Mekhi Becton. And I didn't realize this after doing all the contract stuff. Post June 1st, you could cut Dwayne Brown and save $10 million. Now, I don't think the Jets do that because that's too many eggs in the Mekhi Becton basket. But like you said, if they have enough, security in him to think that he's going to be healthy for them this year, then yeah, I think you could bypass tackle. I don't feel confident that he's going to play 17 games. I feel more confident that Dwayne will play 17 games than I do Mekhi. So for that reason, I would still consider it, but we've talked about it, especially last week. You have to start preparing yourself for a different position. They could still go wide receiver. They could still go. This is actually the first person ever mocked to the Jets this whole cycle, Brian Branch from Alabama. Nobody wants to hear that he could go safety, but you want a down-to-down player, to every down player. This is a person that might get bumped up the board. I'm not suggesting it, but I just think it's something that if you want a 3-down player, Brian Branch is going to fill a role for you more so than a tackle would, more so than your wide receiver 3 would, because if you draft a wide receiver at 15, who are you starting him over? You probably wouldn't start him over Garrett, and you probably wouldn't start him over Lazard based on the money you gave him. So he's starting at wide receiver 3. Sure, he could finish as wide receiver 2, but my rookie tackle could finish as tackle 1. So like there's always the progression throughout the season that could change. So I think it just needs to be an open discussion. All picks, all positions, obviously not quarterback, have to be in the discussion on the table. I've said on Twitter, I'd take a cornerback if Devon Witherspoon was there at now 15, which probably not. But, you get my point. Any position should be talked about. And I think that's the importance of it is we don't know. It sounds like tackles could be a lock, but we don't know for sure. And I think we need to start doing mock drafts where defensive tackle, edge, safety, those are the picks that we're taking in the first round, and then addressing tackle later on.
Yeah, I think, like I said, this is what makes it interesting now is you got 5 picks. I would imagine try to move down.
Yeah.
No. Well, and as we know, Corey Davis wasn't included. Can you get a pick for Corey Davis? What can you get from him? Are you going to get a 6? Does that move the needle for you? Like, right. Something we didn't do last week, Dylan, actually, that we talked about was going over the roster and who do they have that they can, they don't have anybody that's going to get them more than a day 3 pick. So, no. Depending on how great you feel about adding a couple of 6s for a Denzel Mims or, Corey Davis, something like that. I guess it's better than nothing because you've got to bring in some young talent. But at the same time, if you're trying to build for Aaron Rodgers, like, would you rather have a 6th round project or Corey Davis on the roster?
Right, exactly. And I'm glad that you said it because that would have been my next question is, are you happy that Corey wasn't involved in the trade? And do you think now that could be a separate trade for the Jets? And like you said, it's probably just going to be a day 3 pick. You would hope it could be the highest day 3 pick possible, which would be a 4th rounder for Corey Davis. It's probably not going to happen. His health and, he has drop issues. He's not very old, but he just has drop issues and health issues. And I think that those 2 things alone aren't going to make him, you're probably going to get a 5. But yeah, I had a very short list going through the roster of players, and it was all the names you basically mentioned. Denzel Mims. I also added Ashton Davis, Hamza Nasruddin, but those guys are core special teamers. And when I'm looking at
and Nasruddin, you're not going to get anything for him. And
exactly,
what's his name? Ashton Davis couldn't get on the field. So
you're basically hoping that somebody has that same special teams role for them with a bonus of on the field on defense position as well. But you're not going to get that for a Hamza or Ashton Davis. So it's very hard to actually scope this, comb through this roster and find.
Bryce Hall, maybe you might get a 6 or a 7 for him.
And I floated that out last season. Bryce Hall could have been a guy that they move on from last year. And I got a lot of kickback for that. And especially because I believe it was DJ Bieniemy, who's now for ESPN with the Texans. He said that offenses weren't afraid to throw at Bryce Hall. Like they knew at worst it was going to be an incompletion. Like he wasn't going to pick the ball off. It wasn't going to be. So that alone, I was like, all right, well, maybe now his return is diminished. But I think as a cornerback 6, he's fine.
I was going to say, all you can hope for is that on day 3, there's a team that's looking for a corner and they feel like he's better than anyone left on the board,
Yep.
And Jimmy in the chat brings up a point. I've heard a few people say this. The Jets must have an inkling they wouldn't make this deal. And I get that, but I would imagine the Packers had an inkling he was going to stay when he signed his 3-year deal last year. And Rodgers left. So who knows? The Jets can say they think it'll be a 2-year deal, but they asked for protection, and the Packers said no because the Packers clearly don't think it's going to be a 2-year deal. Otherwise, they would have been like, "Sure, here's your protection." But the Jets said we need protection against 1 year, and the Packers said we're not giving it to you, and the Jets said okay. So they took him on, and maybe it'll be 2, and we'll see. But let's see. Return of the Jedi here says we can get a 4th for Corey Davis. I think that's a lot. I don't know if they can. I'd welcome it, obviously. Mm-hmm. And I don't even necessarily want Corey Davis gone. I've said for a while now that even with the injuries at his salary in today's market, he's not a bad he's a relative bargain. So, and I actually was sitting down the other day, and while I was watching draft picks, I just threw on my TV, because I'm using the laptop looking at college games, and I throw on the TV, put on YouTube, put on the season highlights, and they're just kind of playing in the background. And the number of times early that Corey Davis is making big catch after big catch. And I'm like, kind of forget that this guy was playing really well when he was given the opportunity.
Yeah, he had
And when
some
the
big
damn
third down conversions for sure. But
yeah, I think like his first 17 catches of the season were for first down, something ridiculous like that.
yeah, it was like 15 of 16 or 15 of
Yeah,
17. It's
something like
something
that.
silly, like 90 something percent. But I think when
But he
you put
blocks.
Rusty
Yard per catch was
best
high. Clutch
best run
catches.
blocker. Yep. Well,
Yep.
Lazard will give him competition for that, I believe, this year. But to put together Rusty Spooner's entire point, I think even if you get a 5 for Corey Davis, you could take a tight end and do this and make him a tight end / wide receiver. That's probably not going to be a starter, but a heavy rotational guy for you, like a big slot type. Obviously, Schoonmaker could be there in the 5th round. Now that no, we still kept 145 or 143 and 170 now in the 5th round. So who knows what will be available at 170? Laporta, I don't know. He might not be available at 143, but there's a couple other tight ends that could be available. There's I don't know if you've gotten eyes on him yet. Brenton Strange from Penn State.
Penn
He's
State. Yeah,
definitely
I
he's
see him
not.
projected as an undrafted guy in some of these
Yeah.
mocks,
Okay.
and
So
I'm like,
I didn't know his
I
range, but this isn't the mold of the player that Rusty Spooner is describing. I'm just talking about day 3 possible tight ends. But yeah,
right.
I definitely think this could be something that they want to do. Nathaniel Hackett worked with a lot of taller wide receivers in Denver, so who knows what their formula is going to be. This is Brenton Strange here.
Yep.
Yep. Rumbling, bumbling, stumbling. You could tell it's
Yeah.
not like his main calling card, but when you get him out in space and blocking, he could be special. So I think that's a good point. Tight end is probably a pick that we will likely make. I think on day 3, it's kind of been the popular spot. Now that we don't have 2 seconds, we're probably out on Darnell Washington. I could just see the Packers sniping him at 42 and him being like sights on at 43. But if they go Dalton Kincaid in round 1,
And that to me, that was like salt in the wound. Like you can't even keep 42. You got to let them pick in front of you.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. It's
like
tough.
twice, like 2 picks, you let them jump in front of you. It was a complete submission. Like, here, take everything you want. Like it was just ridiculous. That was like you couldn't even do that. It was just such a bad deal, and the Jets just kind of collapsed and gave them everything they wanted. And this is the situation you're in.
Beth Page Chris says we can't lose Davis now. After Elijah leaving, no OBJ, we can't afford one injury and he's gone. And I was talking about this. I brought this up to you, but I was talking about this with another Jets fan on Twitter. If they did move on from Corey Davis, if they do move on from Denzel Mims, Garrett Wilson is the only 2022 wide receiver holdover to 2023 on this roster. Talk about a complete overhaul of the position for Aaron Rodgers. I think that's something that has not been talked about enough, is like they're completely overhauling this position for Aaron Rodgers. So like you said, if it is a 1-year deal, they're going to be probably shuffling the deck at wide receiver again next year. But Lazard signed a 4-year deal. That was something that somebody else also added to it was, hey, would he sign 4 years knowing Aaron Rodgers was only playing 1? Maybe he still does anyway. He still likes Nathaniel Hackett, and who's going to say no to the money realistically at the end of the day? So it's all.
Well, we got to see how they move that money around too.
Yeah, well, now that Rodgers is in the fold, or will be in the fold come draft time, we will see more restructures. We will see reworking of deals in completely different ways. I think we've touched on CJ Mosley not being able to be restructured till September because of when they restructured it last year, and they can't touch it for another 365 days. But they have the tight ends they could redo again. They could honestly just outright cut some players like Ty Johnson, save a couple mil. I think it's like 1.5. Just players like that. So that
that's probably not even worth doing. I mean, that's such a
unless
small
they draft
savings.
a guy, I don't think it's worth it. But I think Connor Hughes had a he was on the right path when he said the Jets offseason is about to start. I think there's going to be a flurry of moves.
Well,
we didn't even we're
just 24 in time.
Minutes. We're 24 minutes in, and we haven't even talked about the other move that happened today. The Jets re-signed their center. So that was the news that came down first. Connor McGovern back. It seems like it's on a 1-year deal. No details have been reported just yet, but they have their 2022 center back in the fold. That now brings back all of their – no, not all their week 1 starters. Was Fant a week 1 starter at left tackle because Dwayne Brown was hurt?
I think he would have had to start somewhere. One of the two.
Because Max Mitchell started at right tackle.
Yeah.
Anyway, they have all 5 of their starters back on paper. Dwayne Brown ended the season at left, Lakin at left guard, McGovern at center. AVT didn't finish the year at right guard, but that's the position they want to keep him at. And then you have Max Mitchell in the fold, whether he's the starter or not remains to be seen. So they have the continuity there. And I think that's really important with offensive line play. If you can bring back 3, 4, 5 starters year over year, I understand that not all of them are going to be great starters, but the continuity alone really helps, even if they don't finish the year as the starter. I could see a situation, like we said, they draft a tackle, Dwayne Brown is gone, or he's the right tackle by the end of the year if Mekhi gets hurt. Center, somebody could outplay McGovern pretty easily. If they got a JMS, boom, you have a different center to end your season. So nobody knows what's going to happen, but continuity entering training camp, I think, is really important on the offensive line. So what are your thoughts on McGovern? I know they were also interested in Ben Jones.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I was going to do a short video on it. I was literally sitting here prepping to do a McGovern 5 or 10-minute video when I saw the tweet about Aaron Rodgers, and then you got to look and make sure it's not fake. And I wanted to see it from at least 4 or 5 people. And I was like, oh, this thing really just happened. Yeah, exactly. I was like, this thing really just happened. So yeah, McGovern, I can't help but wonder. It was funny timing because I just said in an article yesterday or the day before, or a tweet. I was talking about how the Jets, I was saying how if the Rodgers trade goes through, the Jets won't be as aggressive because, of course, Joe Douglas won't have the picks to be moving up like he has in years past.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd said, this is a pretty unpopular take, and I knew it would be unpopular. But I basically was saying, if you look at how much the Jets how much attention they've paid to John Michael Schmitz, he might be their guy, like the only guy, as in if he's not on the board when they're on the clock, do they bring back McGovern? Now it turns out they bring McGovern back today. So as you said, they're down from 1 second rounder to 2. So do they are they hearing something that's telling them he won't be there, which is possible, or were they comfortable taking him when they had 42 and 43, but now they don't? So whatever. I mean, listen, you can say they were going to re-sign him anyway, but that's just pretty funny timing. Like, he's been out there all these weeks, and then 3 days before the draft, you bring him in. I mean, teams gather info. I remember years ago interviewing a former scout, and he was saying, like, and it did surprise me a little bit. He said sometimes stuff does get back channeled to you, and you find out what other teams are planning, and sometimes that's what you dictate your moves on. Is okay, if this team ahead of us, we're hearing they're going to take so and so, let's write that in and kind of assume that guy's going to be off the board. So if they hear that 2 or 3 different teams ahead of them really like JMS, they're going to look around and say, look, let's expect he's not going to be there, and let's sign McGovern now before someone else does. Because if someone else signs him tomorrow and then we don't get JMS in the draft, then we're down to a guy who had 3 concussions last year as our starting center.
Yeah, so the timing of the Aaron Rodgers news didn't necessarily surprise me because Joe Douglas is supposed to meet with the media to discuss his pre-draft press conference tomorrow afternoon. So I figured he didn't want to answer 95% of the questions being about Aaron Rodgers. He actually wanted to talk about the draft. But the McGovern news, the timing didn't make sense for what you just said. At least wait to see what it looks like Friday morning after the first round is over, and you sit there and you're assessing, you have your pick at 42, who's left on the board, can we move up, can we sit put and get a guy. I think Daniel Jeremiah was the first person to mock Tippmann ahead of JMS at 20, whatever the Giants pick, 25. So I think that we could see 2 centers go before the Jets pick again at 42. So I agree. I think it's weird timing, but it goes to show that they're really seeing how the board could come together. And even if JMS is there at 42 and you have McGovern, nothing's stopping me from drafting JMS. Like, McGovern can play guard as a swing guard. I don't know how much the money is, but you'd have to assume it's not, a ton of money. Maybe it's, I don't know. I can't even estimate a guess, but they paid Ryan Khalil $8 million in August. So really you can't ballpark it, but I don't think it's going to be starter money. So JMS he's not off the board for me. And I think when you have 4 meetings with the guy pre-draft, there's smoke, there's fire. And I think JMS could still be the guy if he's there, but it seems like it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah. The thing is, I think he's still in play, but again, going back to what I just said, by bringing back McGovern, it's not as big of a need. and you
No, it's
now
definitely not a
again you're
need.
down to
Yeah.
5 picks to address your needs. So I'm not disagreeing with you, and I kind of would like to see him come back because to me that would be an ideal scenario to have a young kid like that with a veteran like McGovern who is, as we've both said, has experience at center and guard. So you're
Right.
getting you're improving your depth. You're really improving the line all around in a big way. So I wouldn't mind it. But at the same time, are the Jets sitting there going, we got 5 picks. We need guys who are going to play, and we need to fill
Hmm.
holes. And right now, center isn't the hole that it was. So I don't know. We'll see. Like I said, I'm expecting them to trade. The problem is though, when you have 5 picks and you're looking to trade down, anyone looking to trade with you, they're going to know you're kind of desperate. So you're going to have a hard time getting fair value.
Yeah.
They'll say, well, you can either give us what we're asking, or you can keep your 5 picks.
Right.
For a team with a lot of holes, and we talked like you talked about. You mentioned Brian Branch earlier, and I get it. Safety is viewed as a need, but I've said it before, and maybe I'm just trying to convince myself because I want it to be true. But I think they like Tony Adams, and I think they might be looking at this and
Hmm.
saying, we have a guy who we kept on the roster all year last year. We think he can play. He does have the skill set to be a free safety, which is where our need is. So maybe they don't go safety again. Down to 5 picks. Are
Yeah.
you going to take a safety? Are you going to, and again, these picks, these day 3 picks, how often do they pan out? How often are they ready to play year 1? So really, you've got 2 shots to find a couple of players and then a couple of role player types later in the draft. So, I mean, imagine they go tackle and center and then both of them don't play. Like, can you afford that? Well, I mean, the center would play. But if you take a tackle and he's getting outplayed by Dwayne Brown and Mekhi Becton, even because I love the idea of a guy like Skaronski or a guy like Johnson who can kick inside the guard. But if
Hmm.
everyone's healthy, I mean, that becomes one of those situations
You
where
got
if
your
Lakin
spots.
Tomlinson
Yeah.
doesn't play better, do you bench him? It's you. As much as we talk about the best guy plays, far too often teams will play guys based on salary. And
For
Lakin
sure.
Tomlinson is making way too much money to get benched. So even if you draft a versatile guy, the main thing is you're going to have 6 bodies in 5 spots.
Yeah. And somebody mentioned here, Steve232 said he doesn't love the safeties in this draft, but that center is
Nobody
now not a
does.
must. And I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah, you have your 5 offensive linemen. We can preach you have to play your best 5, but at what point are you ignoring other positions to supply a position that doesn't necessarily need it? And I know we're still 1 injury away. We're 1 injury away at every damn position. So like that argument is kind of like to me. But yeah, it's tough. It goes back to what we talked about at the beginning. You have to open your mind to any position at 15 now. It can't just be offensive tackle. It could be a guard or whatever. It could be a center if they love JMS that much. What if they took him at 15? It makes there's too many options and too many scenarios that could happen. It's funny because you said, what if they take a tackle and a center? And that's been like, let's recreate the 2006 NFL draft, Brick and Nick part 2. Let's run it back. But like you said, what if they're not week 1 starters? It just seems silly when you only have 5 picks. And who knows? Maybe Joe Douglas wants to move up still. And like, as silly as it sounds, then you're left with 4 picks because you're putting up, one of those 5th round picks to move up a little bit. So it's going to be very interesting. This week is probably going to drag on till Thursday, but I didn't know if you wanted to do an impromptu mock real quick and just see what we have. I don't even know if these mocks are even updated with the new pick selections, if they've even updated
It's
yet.
not. I did a trade. I was able to make it go through because I tried the actual trade and it wouldn't accept it, and I added like a second, it wouldn't accept it. So I just gave them all of next year's draft class just to push the trade through and get this year's picks right.
Wow, which simulator was this that they didn't accept the real trade?
PFN mock
I thought
drafts
you were going to say
because
some like Wisconsin mock draft
because
site that
you can include players now. So I included
right.
Rodgers in the picks, and I did all the picks as they went in real life. And the simulator was like, nobody would be that stupid. Little
Right.
does the simulator know. So
Well,
yeah,
I
the Jets
guess
have 15, 43, 112, 143, and 170.
Okay, yeah, 170 is they moved up from 207 to 170 technically, and that's probably as close as a protection as you're going to get is pick 170 this year. So you can't really do much with
Yeah.
it. If you trade out of it, you're probably not going to get much next year. Like I feel like if you trade out a draft class, you're looking at 1 round up. So if somebody wanted that 5th rounder this year, they'd probably trade you a 4th next year. That's how I kind of just like bookmark it, sort of, but that's not guaranteed. And somebody could give you a couple small picks to move out of that spot. So nothing's guaranteed with that protection there at 170. So what do you think now at 15? Who do you think could be the guy? Because now a lot changes with just those 2 picks moved back, like we said, JSN, a tackle to New England. Do you have a preferred guy now, or does it not really move the needle for you that much, and you still think tackle?
I think I'm thinking tackle because I'm having a hard time getting away from it because we've been thinking it for so long.
Yeah, same.
I'm still a JSN guy, but again, with Corey Davis still there, how likely is that? Funny, 2 of my favorite receivers in this class, JSN and Josh Downs. And when I ran my mock, JSN went at 14 to the Patriots, and then Josh Downs went 42 to the Packers. So those two receivers, I wasn't able to snag. And I would actually run another one because I was only half paying attention, and I accidentally picked 2 receivers with the 5 picks because I was not in the greatest of moods. But yeah, I think everything's on the board. But I still think it's got to be tackle because that's the problem is you can't rely on Mekhi Becton. It would be a gamble. I mean, the Jets might roll the dice and say we're going to roll with Mekhi and we're going to assume he's healthy, and we've got Max Mitchell coming back, and we've got Ogbui who we re-signed, Cedric Ogbui, and he can fill in if there's an injury. And there will be more guys in free agency and things like that. Let's see, PFN update.
I believe this is our buddy Rich here commenting. Great job at analysis, guys. We appreciate it. We can hit open screen passes now. Yes, we can, and we'll hit them fast too, under 2 seconds.
Yeah, let's see. Let me try.
I think we have a comment here that says Pro Football Network is updated, so I pulled it up. I'm about to hit Let's Draft. I'll pull it up and share my screen if it's actually.
Same here.
Not that I didn't believe you, Frank. I just wanted to check before I.
Yeah, it's updated.
Cool. So we could just run this back. Do you want to just run a quick mock? I mean, it's only 5 picks. It's not going to take too long.
No, we only need about 10 seconds. Thanks a lot, Joe.
Right.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Let's do it.
All right. Present.
Packers took Jordan. Screw the Packers.
It's tough because I've always been like a
I just ran
fan.
I just ran a mock, and the Patriots took JSN and the Packers took Jordan Addison. And
wow.
It looks like.
All right. Well, let's see what happens here. JSN. Oh, and Miles Murphy. Okay, so that's not bad. We're going to decline these trades. No, we're not moving down. No, I mean, we probably still would advocate to move down. I'm not going to speak for you, but if the right team is calling, and I'm trying to look at all the quarterbacks and which ones went. Okay, so all 4 quarterbacks went. I feel like that's a question I feel like I haven't asked you yet. Do you think all four quarterbacks will be gone by 15 now?
Sorry, say that again.
Do you think all 4 quarterbacks will be gone by the Jets pick?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Just going with it still. Bijan Robinson. Do you think he'll be gone by the Jets pick?
No, I think there's an outside shot. I'm not 100% sure, but I think he could be there.
Okay. Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson, Jalen Carter. Probably all 3 gone by the pick.
Hey, those 3 again?
Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson, Jalen Carter, the 3 defensive linemen.
I think they go, yeah.
Okay. So now what I just did, that's 8 players. We have four tackles, presumably, maybe 5 if they like what is it, Anton Harrison. So you have 4 there. You're basically almost in a position where you can get one of those 4 if you want it. Obviously, in this mock draft, it went very differently. Broderick Jones was taken at 7, Paris at 11. So we have 2 of the 4. How many cornerbacks went? 2 cornerbacks went. So that's not bad. But Brian Branch also went. At this pick, I mean, we're going to look at tackle. I don't think we're moving off this guy here. Right
No,
here.
no, I think you got to make that move.
I think you run the card up with Pete Skoronski is on the board here. I have him as my top offensive player this draft. He's the 3rd overall player on my board. Not count. I didn't watch any quarterbacks.
Right.
That's not an interesting trade for us. I mean, yeah, but we're not going to do this trade, are we? Yeah.
Nah, let's stay away from trades for this one.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we're up at 43. Look who the Packers took. Yeah. Oh, man. They started off hot. Hendon Hooker to back up Jordan Love for the second half of the 2023 season. Yeah, all right, so we obviously went offensive tackle, so we can move off this. Wow, Darnell's still here. I think this would be a conversation or a question for you. Josh Downs or Darnell Washington? I'm not saying those are the only two options here with the pick, but if you had to choose between the two, I know you're a big Downs guy and you've kind of been creeping up on Washington. Who would you take here?
I like both of them a lot. If Corey Davis had been included in that trade, I would have said Downs in a heartbeat. Sure. But you know what? I'm still going to say Downs because, as we said, the Jets don't have a lot under contract beyond this year, and I think having reworked C.J. Uzomah, he's not going anywhere. Conklin's not going anywhere, unless listen, what if the Jets just don't like Ruckert? What if they didn't like what they saw from him? They're looking at tight ends. This is a football team that could not move the ball, and he couldn't get on the field. So is that why they're looking at tight ends? If they don't like him, then I might take Darnell Washington there because you just watch the guy as a blocker. He impacts the game in such a big in so many ways, and he has such a big impact in both areas.
Yeah, I think that would be a major letdown if Jeremy Ruckert didn't pan out with the Jets, and nobody I don't think is asking him to be amazing or Hall of Fame caliber, but just get on the damn field and do some things would be nice to watch once in a while, being a Jets fan and how crazy his dad is about the team. So, right. So with this pick, are you actually leaning Darnell over everybody available, or do you want to look at other positions? I see Adebaware, Schmitz is still here, obviously. I don't know your thoughts on Cedric Tillman, but if you wanted to go with a taller wide receiver again, Corey Davis still in the fold, Tippmann. And then I feel like after that, we're reaching a little bit too much. So, Jahmyr Gibbs, I didn't even see him before when I scrolled all the way up. Does he move the needle for you?
I mean, he's a hell of a player.
He's so damn good.
I always say I don't like taking backs early, but listen, this is now you've now just invested your entire future. Well, the next 2 years in Aaron Rodgers. Yep. So get weapons. I mean. What are you going to get out of Breece Hall early in the year? Is he going to be a factor? Yep. Is he going to be the same guy for the first 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks?
Did you see his tweet, by the way? I don't know if you.
I did. Yeah. So
his knees
feeling, that might be the first time healthier. I smiled since the trade. That was the first time I laughed. I was like, that's a good one.
Yeah. I love it. I think. Yeah, I agree. I think Breece Hall is probably not going to be, your bell cow week one out the gates type of player. So, I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs does open that conversation. Darnell probably be the safer pick just based on the Jets and what they're targeting. What do you want to do? You want to do Darnell, Jahmyr, Adebaware? I think they got to go offense. I think they got to stay away from defense with these premium picks and really surround.
Yeah, you know
Rodgers.
What? Give me
one of the top
Josh. Give me Josh Downs.
Cool. Yeah, I saw Southern Jet in there. Put Josh Downs. So
yeah, and Southern Jet. I know Southern Jet's a big NC fan. I messaged him. I think it was early last year, and I was like, I think this kid Josh Downs is going to be a player. Mm-hmm. And then the more I watched him, he just kept making play after play.
That's awesome. All right. Well, we did add a playmaker. We added protection. We added a playmaker. We've basically covered all 3 Ps for Daniel Jeremiah because we have the passer already in fold. So,
and if I had a crystal ball, I may have gone in another direction if I knew Matthew Bergeron was going to be there this late.
Right. Yeah. And he's ranked at 88. So that's 30 spots, 12, 24, 25 spots
and
away from.
It happens, man. Every year there's people that fall further than they should.
Yep. And this is actually the highest I think I've ever seen Jaden Reed on rankings. Usually, I mean, he started the season, PFF had him down in like the 260s, like spitting on him with his
Right.
like, oh, you could just grab him with your last pick because you know he's going to be there with the formula. But I'm glad that he's kicking up because he's my wide receiver 3. I know that
Right.
sounds really stupid, but he's my wide receiver 3. I like him more than Quentin Johnston. I think he's so special what he did at the Senior Bowl. Obviously, we went playmaker already, and we went offensive tackle, which looks like the board here. We didn't.
Who's there at linebacker?
Okay, I was going to say we didn't take tight end, but there is one there. Linebacker. Okay, we got a decent crop.
Yeah.
We still have one more pick between Dorian Williams' ranking at 163. So I feel like that would be the range of guys that you'd have to take at this pick that would
I
probably
would
not be there at the next one.
I'd look at Overshown or Dennis. I think Servassier Dennis is a really good all around guy.
Yep.
And
Yep.
same for Overshown. I think Dennis is probably a better blitzer, but Overshown's probably a better cover guy. But both solid players. I think both can start.
I was gonna say Overshown. I agree. Definitely more of the explosive, blitzer type, and Dennis is more coverage. But I was wondering if we should look at a position that could be a potential starter. I don't know if we have any spots left to fill, but is there any position that you're thinking of that could be a starter? I know you said that these linebackers could be starters, but do you think they'd be starters week 1, or do you think they'll be starters by like the end of this year?
Well, I mean, if either of these guys can show the versatility to push Quincy Williams, I wouldn't rule that out. I know the Jets signed him, but that it's not as if they paid him huge money. They paid him enough to start.
Sure.
But I think if you get one of these more athletic guys who can cover a little bit, they may not start, but they could be the guy they could be your third down guy. But I mean, in all honesty, teams just tend to go nickel nowadays anyway. So it's if the guy's not your starter, if it's not your CJ Mosley who never comes off the field, they don't ask guys to cover as much as they used to, unless you're special, unless you're a guy who can. But yeah, what about Zach Pickens?
I was just gonna say I'll throw a curveball here. Okay, you're gonna throw Zach Pickens in there. I like him. I didn't study deep on him. I believe he was a Senior Bowl guy. I thought he was good explosiveness. My curveball that I was gonna throw was Roschon Johnson. I know we talked about Jahmyr Gibbs in the second round. Roschon Johnson is probably a starting level running back that could get you through till Breece Hall is healthy. I've heard him as high as running back 3 on some people's boards. Yeah, here he is here. And I've heard, I believe it was Matt Miller of ESPN said that Roschon on any other team in the country is probably, top 3 back in the country. So it just goes to show what they had there at Texas. I'm cool with either one. I think they both fill a need. I think Pickens would probably fill the more urgent need. Here you see Roschon in space making a catch and just running after the catch, making guys miss. It's basically what he does. He's just consistently good at everything, including pass protection. So I'm cool with that. I'm cool with Pickens because we do need another defensive tackle alongside our Q and Q movement in the middle. So I'll let you decide on this one, but I could go either way.
Yeah, so I could go either way. At this point, the only reason I would go DT is because I think you're going to have an easier time finding a back in either free agency or as an undrafted free agent. Whereas I think at DT it'll be a little bit tougher. Like I say all the time, I'm a big Nesta Jade Silvera guy. I don't know if he's going to be a round 6 or 7 guy or if he's going to go undrafted. I'm especially now that they're down to 5 picks. And again, I think they'll make moves, but I'm looking forward to the UDFA types almost as much as I am the draft because I think there's going to be a lot more of those than there will draft picks.
Yeah, I think that's where the most depth will come from. Certainly, as they could have 12 to 13 UDFA's. Not all of them will stick, but they're going to have to round out that rookie mini camp with bodies. And if you only have 5 rookie draft picks, you're going to have to fill in the rest of those spots for sure. So, all right, let's go Pickens here. He does have a very high RAS score of a 9.22, which is a Joe Douglas approved number. So we solidified defensive tackle here. We have pick 143. All right, and then we have 170, and then we're done. So only 2 more picks. We don't necessarily have to grab running back. I'm just going to peek at who's available. I don't really love all those names. I know Eric Gray is one that hasn't been talked about much.
I like him a lot.
Yeah.
He doesn't
I'm
he
kind
doesn't
of
have great sp he doesn't have great speed, but he's got plenty speed. Really
right.
elusive, good spin move, makes people miss, catches the ball really smoothly out of the backfield. I can't remember if you I messaged somebody a few weeks ago when I was watching the tackles, and well, that's why I was
Yep.
watching the game to watch the Oklahoma tackles, and I forgot how much I liked Gray, and I'm like, this dude is really he's again is I think this is a good running back class, and you're going to get starting or really good players in the middle of late rounds.
Hmm. I'm looking at these offensive tackles. I just happened to click here. Number 306, Jake Witt. I'm pretty sure the Jets met with him, so that's one just to keep an eye on as a UDFA guy.
Right, that's just a little Eric Gray while you're talking. Sorry.
Oh yeah, and like you said, it was when you're watching the tackles, Anton Harrison and Wanye Morris. You're just like, damn, Eric Gray. They're doing the dirty work for him, but then you're just like, shit. Well, the rest of this rep, I'm gonna watch Eric Gray, and it is fun.
Yeah.
So I would take any of those three Oklahoma players for the Jets. Let's go back to all. All right, how about this? We talked about Servassier Dennis last pick and how that was that range of players that probably might not make it back to this pick. He did make it back to this pick. You want to go ahead and grab a developmental future cover linebacker to replace CJ Mosley?
Yeah, who's sitting there?
It's Servassier Dennis. He's the third
Yeah, I would take
highest on
him
the
there.
overall board. All right, so we're going to
Who
take
but who's
Dennis.
actually before we do that, who's
Yep.
there? Oh, you took him?
No, I didn't. Oh,
I
can
was
share
gonna
my
say what
screen
we
now.
haven't looked who are some of the edge guys?
All right, edge. Isaiah Land, who they did have a pre-draft.
They visited with him.
Yep, Florida A&M. He was a Senior Bowl
Mike
guy.
Morris from Michigan, I really like.
Mike Morris, yeah, he's
KJ Henry,
definite.
we've both talked about.
Yep, Henry's a nice guy from Clemson. Habakkuk, we've talked about. Baldonado from Pittsburgh. Ali Gay, I'm
Brenton
kind of
Cox can play too.
wishy-washy. I know we like Yaya Diaby. I feel like we're kind of falling out of the range here of
Yeah,
reaching
that's
on
way
a
too
guy.
early for those
I think
guys.
Isaiah Land, I think we haven't – I don't think we've taken a single guy that's gone on a visit with the Jets. So I think that would be – it would also make sense.
Yeah,
you know?
I would go Land or Morris. I think Morris is strong enough to play a little bit inside if they need him to.
Yeah, so the only thing that worries me is his RAS score. I know a lot of people put with Joe Douglas specifically, people put a lot of eggs into that basket, but I'm cool with either. We can go Mike Morris. He's from a more predominant school at Michigan, so definitely a true defensive end, 4-3 defensive end, hand in the dirt type of guy, where I think Isaiah Land would probably be more of a stand-up, need to bulk up type of rusher for you.
Right.
All right, final pick here, 170. Excuse me. Let's go to the overall board. Oh, I
was going to say, let's look and see who's there.
Popping right out at me is Moro Ojimo.
Did we take a DT yet?
We took Pickens. So it doesn't discourage me, but I don't think it's wise here to double up.
I mean, you got Patterson, who's played center and guard.
Yep.
Brenton Cox, I discussed him earlier today. If you check.
Oh yes, you had the Gators guy on today.
Yes, we had Scott Carter on today to talk about the Florida Gators prospects because there are many of them. Garrett Williams. What about Garrett Williams as a potential steal? Guy who missed time with an injury.
Yep.
Did they?
They had a meeting with him.
I think based on sort of bang for your buck, I think I would take him here, even though Florida isn't necessarily a need. Rich is asking about free safeties. Yep. Sorry, I was going to say Rich is asking about free safeties. We talked earlier, Rich. I'm of the opinion. I'm guessing. I think they like Tony Adams a lot, and I don't know that they will go with a safety in this class. I think they'll go with, they added Clark. They've got Whitehead coming back. I think they like Adams. I don't know if Ashton Davis sticks. I think my guy Jason Taylor might go undrafted. I don't know that he will. I think he's got to get picked, but he's somebody I would look at in the later rounds or UDFA.
And I know you're just talking about Tony Adams, and not all of his teammates were safeties that are coming out of Illinois, but any of those secondary members, Devon Witherspoon, Quan Martin, Sidney Brown.
It's crazy that anybody was able to throw the ball on them.
Yeah, and I followed. Apparently, their defensive backs coach in Illinois was promoted to the offensive coordinator position this year, and it's like, it's about damn time. This guy had guys in the pipeline. You talk about Kirby Joseph and Tony Adams the year prior. So yeah, I think it's just when you have something good, you gotta keep them in house. And I'm glad that he got the promotion he wanted. But yeah, any of those Illinois guys I would take. But I agree. I feel like they like the position way more than we like the position. And I understand Chuck Clark doesn't move the needle for everybody, but Chuck Clark is a versatile player that can do a lot of things. And if they got to go with the 3 safety heavy rotation, that's probably what they're going to do. So with this pick, I mean, I like Garrett Williams. He's a core special teamer at this rate. Plus, he's value as a depth corner. You could probably move a Bryce Hall at this point. Other than that, I mean, none of these guys are really moving the needle. Jarrett Patterson, if you want a little bit of versatility from a big school like Notre Dame. So I would guess it would probably be Jarrett Patterson or Garrett Williams to round this one out.
Again, I would say Garrett Williams just because of the
Cool.
bringing back. Well, again, we don't know what's going to happen at center, but I think bringing back McGovern eases that need a little bit on the interior. It's another body, another veteran body. So probably Garrett Williams. In the looking in the chat here, Wayne brings up a good point that if they don't pick up Becton's 50-year option and Dwayne Brown's contract expires, they don't have any tackles next year other than Max Mitchell. So they will need one. But again, what we keep stressing here, what I keep repeating, is you got 5 picks and you got to win now. So I think they're going to, for the next couple of years with so few picks, they're not going to be drafting for the future. They're going to be drafting for this year. I mean, unless you want to talk about those day 3 guys, but in terms of early round guys, it's going to be interesting to see if they take a tackle. Because I think if they take a tackle, Becton or Brown has a chance to get benched if they don't outplay him, because taking a guy at 15 to not play them, I just don't see it.
Yeah, when you factor in the premium asset that you're going to place into the rookie tackle, the $11 million that you're on the hook for with Dwayne Brown, and then you have Mekhi Becton, it's like, unfortunately, all signs point to it being Mekhi Becton's, probably going to be the one having to sit on the bench if the rookie's really good. But it's just, I don't know. There's too many things that can happen if you take an offensive tackle. But you do all this talking and you're like, okay, well, they could do this or they could do that at 15 instead. And then like this, we end up right here back with Peter Skoronski. And I mean, nobody's mad that we got Peter Skoronski, but it's just unfortunate that maybe it's because we've mocked so many offensive tackles to the Jets. I don't know.
That's the thing. Like,
we're just kind of programmed.
It's funny, yeah. I said that. Like, I think I'm saying tackle because we've been saying tackle all this time, but I don't know how you do that. I've said all along, it's got to be a guy who's going to play, and I think maybe you go in another direction. You take a receiver or you take an edge guy. Maybe you take Lucas Van Ness. At 15, and then you grab a tackle either later on or you wait for another veteran to shake loose. Like I said, it's all going to come down to, are they just going to say, we've got to make some noise now? So that means we're going to have to take some risks. And one of the risks we're going to take is to bet on Mekhi Becton.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I think when you look at our mock, we had 5 picks, like you said. Skoronski, Downs, Pickens, those guys are starters. So if Joe Douglas is able to do anything in this draft class and get 3 starters out of it, I feel like that is a successful draft. Obviously, you would love to have 42. You'd probably still love to have 207. I mean, I'd take 170 over 207, but I think that's kind of where you're at. You're looking at 2 or 3 starters out of this whole entire draft class, and the rest are developmental guys for the future with an eye to 2024. Even your first few picks could be, but they could just end up being starters for you. So it's going to be Joe Douglas's hardest draft class by far. He's had so many picks, so much luxury, so much leisure to do whatever he wants with the board, money to throw at players in congruency with the draft picks. Now he doesn't have a lot of money. He doesn't have a lot of draft picks. We have a really good, damn good quarterback now in the fold. The graphic on ESPN is just embarrassing how he's had 10 4,000-yard seasons, and we've had one in 1967 before my mom was probably, before she was born, before, so many Jets fans that are invested in this team were even, covering the team, or even before they were born. I think it was Connor Hughes and Connor Rodgers on SNY breaking down the trade, and like they were both just like, yeah, we haven't seen good quarterback play in our lifetime. And it's just like, well, shit, that's really unfortunate that a lot of these guys are, going through the same thing. Seems to be trending on the upswing. Hopefully it is. We can hopefully put the trade package aside after a couple more mocks. Maybe we'll find some players that we really like falling to us at 42 and 112, and we'll feel a lot better about the trade. But any final words before we get on out of here?
No, other than the Jets got fleeced, but that's there's nothing you can do about it. Water under the bridge. Move on. Hope that they recover somehow and move down from 15 and find another dumb team that doesn't like having draft picks and give some of those to the Jets and keep building. It's you got a 1 or 2 year window now, and it's I don't know. I mean, they need players. They don't have picks, but again, it's not. It's obviously right now today they're far better off than they have been in a very long time. It's not that it's not that they're in a bad spot. I just, as I said, like you can want Aaron Rodgers and be happy to have Aaron Rodgers, but
Right.
you could also feel that they overpaid for him, which
Yep.
again I think they did. But what's done is done. And they listen. I was talking to somebody about it earlier who I was saying that if you get Rodgers, like, and let's say you take JSN, who probably won't be there now. He was kind of part of the equation. But let's say it's I don't know, Josh Downs, who's not in JSN's league, but he's still a good player.
Hmm.
So if you've got Josh Downs in the slot with Garrett Wilson on the outside, and you've got Lazard, and you've got, you're going to work Corey Davis in, and if Hall is back healthy, I mean, it's all a bunch of ifs, but
Hardman. Yep.
the talent is now there with this quarterback to be a top 5 offense or
Hell
top
yeah.
top 8, at least top 8, and like a lot of firepower, and they haven't had that in a long time. So they're not going to have to be perfect on defense. They can give up some points. So even if the defense regresses a little, which it probably will, even if the defense regresses a little bit, they should put up a ton of points.
Oh yeah.
Um, and that if you do that, you win games, and if you win games, you go to the playoffs. And when you go to the playoffs, anything can happen. So I'm gonna, cheer my head off like I always do. I'm happy with where they are. I just don't like how they got there.
Yeah, and I think that's a very fair way to put it. You can certainly be happy with the destination of where they got to just for now. Obviously, nobody's happy with just getting Aaron Rodgers. We want to see
Right.
W's, multiple double-digit W's in 2023.
Right.
Real quick before we go, and I completely forgot to ask, but I wanted to clip this out and make it a short. Just quickly in 30 seconds, who do you think predictively is now the Jets' first pick at 15 overall?
Honestly, I haven't had enough time to think about it since the trade just went down.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, I think offensive tackle may be off the board, and that's not even based on the Rodgers deal. That was based on me kind of listening to myself talk on another pod. And as I was saying, oh, they because someone asked, should they take a quarterback? And I'm saying, like,
Mm-hmm.
no, like this pick has to be someone that plays every down. And as I
Yep.
say, I thought, well, what if the 5 guys on the O line right now stay healthy and they take a tackle? Then you're taking a guy who's not going to play every down. And that was a couple days ago, and that's when I started to think, like, I mean, I was already kind of settled on Jackson Smith and Jigba, and I know I've gone way over. You said 30 seconds, but put it this way: I would say in Jigba, but I don't see him falling to 15. I didn't see him falling to 13. The more I looked at him, the more you look at his production, his tape, his combine. I was like, I'm arguing with people on the forums on JetNation that the Jets should take him, and I'm like, he's never going to be there. Why am I arguing? So if he wasn't going to be there at 13, he's not going to be there at 15. So who do they take? I mean, if Addison falls, he's a possibility. But I think, and my logic behind the JSN thing was, you've now created a 1 to 2 year window. So it's got to be all about creating, getting Aaron Rodgers surrounded with guys who can make plays now. I think JSN gave him the best chance for that. I'm thinking like maybe Tank Dell later in the draft. Like you just want those guys with those quick in and out of their breaks that get that, who can get open off the line. Dell might be that guy, but he's a little smaller. So if teams just try to jam him, is he going to be able to get off the jam? So that kind of remains to be seen. But
Mm-hmm.
that's my very long non-answer. I don't know. Like the trade just happened. I'm just now calming down. I've taken a few breaths. I haven't given a lot of thought. Like, what should it be? But I don't know that tackle later, fine, I guess. But maybe tackle in free agency.
Yeah, I think after
Fleming,
all
Fleming,
the
get that kid Fleming who just played last year for Denver for Hackett in Denver. Started 13,
Cam
14,
Fleming,
14. Yeah.
yep.
I've tweeted a couple times and I'm surprised we haven't even heard his name. Is like, hey, maybe the Jets should look at him. Go sign Cam Fleming, and then you don't have to take a tackle. Then you have
Yep.
a
Technically, they
not
brought back
great, but
Abuye too. So, yep.
exactly. You brought a Bouye back, you go get Fleming, and now all of a sudden, like, you don't have you know, you don't have the greatest tackles if someone gets hurt, but you have veterans who've played. And Fleming probably better player than Obuye, but you know, we'll see what happens there. And let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
don't.
think like you said, it's a long-winded answer. I think after all of the deception of opening your minds to all these different possible positional picks that it could be, I'm just going to go chalk. It's going to be offensive tackle. I'm going to guess Broderick Jones. Um, I just don't see it like any other. If there's one of those four guys on the board, even an Anton Harrison or a Darnell Wright, it's going to be pushed up. It's going to be a 2024 need at the very least. So it's a need nonetheless. But like you said, it's you can talk yourself in so many circles. Kalijah Cansey could be the pick. Brian Branch could be the pick. Who knows? They could really like out of Buare, and he could be the pick. There's just so many different options. But if I had to go with one name, it would probably be Broderick Jones.
Well, here's the thing, and I was actually just starting an article. I'm going to do something a little bit, and I wanted to wait till after the draft because I know that'll be everyone's first response. Like, how can you even talk about this before the draft? But part of me is wondering, are the Jets thinking that they're better than they actually are? Like, do they just view this as like, oh, we're Aaron Rodgers and a linebacker away from being a Super Bowl contender, which I don't think they are. But that would be the only explanation to the lack of moves up to this point.
I mean, I definitely think they think they are a Super Bowl contender.
That's what I mean.
It's up for discussion if every fan thinks they are. I certainly think they are. I look at teams like the Chiefs, and there's positions that they have that are straight cheeks. So
well, that's
not every position is going to be great, but not every position is, we have to have serviceable. We don't have serviceable at every position yet, but I think at the end of this draft, add a couple of veterans in free agency still, the Al Woods of the world. I know A'Shawn Robinson just got picked up, but those types of veteran moves with the coupling of the draft, I think you're very much a Super Bowl contender. I think we're probably the favorite to win the AFC East. We split with the Bills last year with straight cheeks at quarterback. So I don't know. I think we're Super Bowl. I think we're the fifth best roster in the NFL. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly haven't looked, since free.
I haven't looked either, but that's just me planting my flag that we're top five. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, we have the draft. I just saw a clip. Von Miller, I guess, was doing a podcast or something when the trade went down, and he was like, "Yo, the Jets are legit with Aaron." Like, and Cole Beasley too. Somebody listed the Jets as like the third best team. And he was like, look at the scores from when they played the Bills last year. And that was without Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
So that's my answer to people who say, oh, well, the Jets won a bunch of games against backup quarterbacks, which they did. And that's a legitimate thing. And that's why I think the defense will regress a little bit. You're not going to get, Skylar Thompson or whatever his name was and some of these other guys every week. But at the same time, when they played the big time guys, they held their own against them. Every quarterback they faced played their worst football against the Jets. So that stands for that, that means something. And I don't know, man. I'm a little bit stressed out about this draft. I can't see them not. Like I said, my concern is that they're going to move down, but that's going to be tough to do without getting fleeced because teams know that you have to move down. But even still, like if you can move down and recoup a 3, do something like that.
A 3 would be nice. But there are so many players in this 43 to 112 range, and I was saying it on Twitter. There are so many guys in that 70 pick range that you got to get a pick. You got to do something, trade somebody,
But that's the thing. Everyone's going to want to pick in that range,
Of course,
everyone wants to pick in that range, and everyone wants picks for next year. That's why that one hurts. Is you look at next year's class, man. It's insane. And something that you look at. Someone said to me earlier, like, oh, who cares if we give up a 1 next year? It's pick 29. I thought, I bet that's what the Broncos said when they traded for Russell Wilson. Who cares? We're getting Russell Wilson, man. He's a future Hall of Famer. That's going to be pick 30 or 31. Okay. Well, what is it now? Pick 5? So that's going to sting on draft day.
Well, that's it's not even Russ's fault. It's Nathaniel Hack. Oh, that's our offensive coordinator now. So, I completely understand what you're saying. You have to, obviously, when the trade is, from the Jets' perspective, they are hoping it's the 30th pick. It's not going to be a guarantee, but that is the hope, is that it's in the 30s. I guess we'll be back. We want to do a show Wednesday or Thursday before the draft. We'll be back one more time before day one.
Let's talk after this because I don't know what
Sure.
our plan is for
Yeah,
draft
we'll
day.
figure out one of the days, but we're going to for sure bring you recaps of all the days, whether it's day 1, day 2 and 3, day 2, 1, 2, 3. We'll get all the recaps for you this weekend for sure. Whether we have another live show or not this week, we will discuss in the next couple minutes. But for Glenn, you can follow him on Twitter at AceFan23. Please make sure you're following his draft account. This week is going to be busy with videos at Jets Picks, at Jets Picks. Tons of, like you
Thanks
said,
for all the comments
undrafted
in the
guys.
chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks to all the comments in the chat. You guys were great tonight. We're definitely going to have to do another mailbag coming up. Maybe post-draft we'll do a mailbag and get everybody's questions on the new guys after we get our eyes and study on all the guys that they draft. You can follow me on Twitter at dterman. Follow JetNation on all social medias, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. We might even have a MySpace. We're that old. We don't know. And we'll catch you sometime this week. And if not, we'll catch you with all the recaps of all the Jets picks, day 1, 2, and 3. Have a good rest of your week. We have Aaron Rodgers, so be a little happy. And let's go, Jets.